Hey everybody, welcome back. Marcus Graves back again with another review, this time to Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, this first half is going to be the basic review. I'm going to give my rating, so on and so forth, the dynamics of the film, the limitations of the film, all that good stuff. There's going to be a second half of this video, and that is the spoiler talk. But first, let's get into the review. So, as a conclusion to the saga, that's what they've been touting it as, that's what they've been saying it's going to be. As a conclusion, with The Rise of Skywalker, they try to massage what they could from The Last Jedi, and in that instance, you now have, because of what they've done here in Rise of Skywalker and what was done in The Last Jedi and what was done in The Force Awakens, you have a very tenuously cohesive sequel trilogy. The conclusion for Kylo Ren is a logical narrative progression. However, when you see it as the whole, it then begins to call into question, well, what was Luke's motivation this entire time if this happens? I'll get into that in spoilers. Carrie Fisher's integration into this movie was seamless at the beginning. At the beginning, I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, obviously you can see where they took her out of The Force Awakens and they put her into here. For the most part, and in the overall structure of the story in the first act anyway, it's seamless. When you hit the midway point and past, it's a little different. The set design and the visual direction. J.J. Abrams, say what you will about him. Say what you will about Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi. Many know that I have. I know many people have, one way or the other. But visually, especially The Last Jedi, they brought it. The pushing of boundaries in certain ways, such as Crate and the red sand. Here, in The Rise of Skywalker, on a planet called Kijimi, set design, visual direction, very dynamic. Naomi Ackie, as the new character, Janna, her performance, she has a very limited role in this, but her performance, what she's able to infuse in her facial expressions and her body language into this character, very dynamic performance, very expressive performance in the limited time that she had. Now let's get into some of the limitations that bogs this film down, and bogs it down in a big way. The pacing, the very limited pacing, driving to this conclusion and having to deal with The Last Jedi. And I don't want to make The Last Jedi seem like a pariah, but it was the start, because you have The Force Awakens that was going a particular direction. The Last Jedi decided to go its direction. They kind of jumped off, but it kind of veered to its own thing. Now Rise of Skywalker is kind of going this way. So when you have that, no matter what you do, you are going to have issues. Once again, you're going to have issues with Kylo Ren, his story arc, where it goes and how that deals with what Luke Skywalker did. Rey's storyline, Finn's storyline. They introduced an element into Finn's story that should have been introduced last episode to culminate here. To introduce it in the last 30 minutes of the film, the pacing is limited in this film. Character motivations are vague and underdeveloped, particularly for Palpatine. Certain elements are brought up that seek to tie everything together. But in seeking to tie everything together with each other, you create this one defining question throughout all the narrative choices that were being made. Why? Why now? Why here? Why at all in certain instances? I will say this, the theme of the film is togetherness and unity at the end of the day, and unity on both sides. There are things that happen in this film that do emphasize and buoy that theme. Unfortunately, kind of like The Last Jedi, where you had to sacrifice the character of Luke Skywalker to uphold the theme you wanted to go for. To uphold the theme you want to go for here, you have to sacrifice some things, and you have to sacrifice some story, which causes inconsistency with not only your sequel trilogy, but with the whole saga in its entirety. Its handling of the lore is inconsistent and incongruent in a lot of ways. In some ways, it is congruent. In some ways, they are consistent. And in a lot of ways, in a lot of big ways, it's inconsistent. So, after saying all that, what is the rating, my frame rating, for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker? The frame rating for The Rise of Skywalker, taking in all of its dynamics and all of its limitation, is 2.5 frames out of 5. And guys, that is the non-spoiler review for The Rise of Skywalker. In the next moment, we are going to go into spoiler talk. So, if you have not seen it yet, first of all, thank you for watching my review, and please come back after you've seen the film to get into my spoiler talk section. And now, here we go. Spoiler talk. Let's get into the whole character conclusion that I was talking about, where the conclusions are consistent. However, how you get there is kind of muddled and vague. So let's go with Kylo Ren first. The whole arc has been his struggle and his redemption. That's consistent. We saw he struggled with the call to the light in The Force Awakens. He kills his father, yet when you watch his face, it's not reveling in the death of his father. It's blank. Completely blank. So there's nothing, he's not distraught by it. He's neither elated by it. It's a more introspective time for him. When you get to The Last Jedi, yes, he kills Snoke and he becomes the Supreme Leader. Yet when he had the chance to kill his mother, another tie to the light, he was unable to do so. So you get to this film where he is struggling with his vulnerabilities. He feels like he can't come home, but his mother reaches out to him. He's able to feel the presence of his father and the love that his parents had for him. That is consistent. Luke Skywalker. I go into this in my video, Luke Skywalker isn't Luke Skywalker. But if this has been his whole theme, the struggling with the light, that means that there was light in him to struggle against. What in the hell did Luke Skywalker see that made him, even for an inkling, want to kill his nephew? There's nothing but darkness, when this whole sequel trilogy has been about him struggling with the light. And you could say, well, Marcus, remember Palpatine said, I have been the voice inside your head all this time. You know that so he probably was seeing Palpatine. Problem though, if he was only seeing Palpatine, how did he not recognize it as Palpatine? You could say, well, Marcus, it's darkness. He didn't recognize it. Leia recognized it in Rey. And it's implied that Luke recognized it in Rey, that she was a Palpatine. So if they can recognize that Rey is a Palpatine, they can't recognize Palpatine in their son and in their nephew? Rey, her arc, ending with her becoming a Skywalker. She started out as an orphan who did not know her name. She chose her own path. She chose her own lineage by saying, I am Rey Skywalker. That character arc conclusion, where the character ends, is consistent. How you get there, though, it's a little murky. And just to provide an example, did she have to be a Palpatine? Narratively speaking, and I could be missing something, what is the point of her being a Palpatine? Because the conclusion, let's say, excise the whole fact that she's a Palpatine. And then she chooses her own path to become a Skywalker. That changes barely anything. Yes, by having her be a Palpatine, you have the ultimate evil that she could become. But she chooses Skywalker. However, in The Last Jedi, she already chose to reject the dark side. That was the whole point of her going into that cave. Luke saying she could be tempted by the dark side, but she's going to go save Kylo. Kylo puts her hand out to her. So, you can rule the galaxy. No, I reject you, I reject the dark side, I am a Jedi. So if she's already done that, what is her figuring out that she is the granddaughter of a grandfather that she never knew going to do? Narratively speaking. And it also brings up questions about Palpatine and those who were close to him. His son. Was his son just as powerful as he was? Was his son just as powerful as Rey? Why would his son reject him? Did Rey's father know that Palpatine was his father? He had to have, because why would you hide the child? You hid the child so that your father wouldn't get his hands on her. Which means, not only did you know he was still alive, you knew who he was. Why'd you reject him? That's a story that should be told. He says that he's been the one in Kylo's mind this entire time. Fine. He's the one behind Snoke. Fine. Who the hell is Snoke? Who the hell is Snoke? Who's he based off of? I understand that Palpatine needs a figurehead probably. You don't want Palpatine to come out, I thought you died, blah blah blah. Luke Skywalker's still around. He can't come, so I can't show my face. I have to have a figurehead. I understand that. Who the fuck is Snoke? Because who is he based off of? Is he based off of Palpatine? Wouldn't that be a little on the nose? Why would you need him as a figurehead then if he's based off of you? But apparently he has some sort of clout and some sort of reputation because Han, Leia, and Luke know about him and knew that he was the one that tempted him to the dark side. Did they never question where this dude came from? You see Snoke-like creatures in a vat at the very beginning. For what? Who is he based off of? He's powerful in the Force. Why? How is he powerful in the Force? Is he mixed with your DNA and something? Like, how are you even still alive? Dominic Monaghan's character says, oh my gosh, Palpatine is still alive. How? Oh, the dark arts, cloning, is no end to the secrets of the Sith. That's not an answer. You're throwing out things in the hope that people will just gloss over it as you're glossing over it right now. That's not an answer. Okay, fine. I'll give you the mulligan. He's back. Okay, he's back. Why is he revealing himself now? What's the point of revealing yourself now, at this moment in time? To do what? To do what? Did Snoke have your directives? If he had your directives, why not reveal yourself in Episode 8? When she was in the throne room? Because now you have the grandson of Vader and your granddaughter at the exact moment in time that you want them to be there, at the exact same time. So why reveal yourself now? Also, he used this life energy force technique to kind of reanimate himself a bit. Question, you have legion of Force acolytes, Force disciples, Sith disciples that are with you right now. You couldn't have siphoned the energy from them? Well, Marcus, he didn't want, those are his disciples. When did Palpatine ever care about his disciples? Ever. So you didn't take the energy from them? Oh, they have to be powerful Force users. Says who? The movie certainly does. I mean, yes, they say it in the dialogue, but the movie doesn't convey that visually. It doesn't convey that in order to do this, you need a powerful Force user to do it. To reanimate yourself. You just need life energy. The other thing is, too, apparently that's a death sentence like Luke transferring himself to Crate in The Last Jedi. That it's such a strain on the body that it's basically a death sentence. If he sucked the life energy out of Rey and Kylo, why didn't he finish the job and just kill them outright? Bro, if I remember correctly, she had already rejected him by that point. So why not just kill them? You had them dead to rights. Literally. Let's get into the lore, and I'm going to lump these things together. The Force abilities, and once again, not their existence, but the utilization of these Force abilities with the lore of the Force that has come in the continuity as we've seen it so far. Palpatine's whole thing about all the Sith live within me. What? Since when? And the other thing is too, George has said that the Sith cannot retain their individuality in the Force because of their selfishness. Qui-Gon was trained, and he then therefore trained Yoda and Obi-Wan, and presumably they trained Luke, to retain your individuality in the Force, because remember, the Sith are only thinking about the here and the now. They're not thinking about the afterlife. There is nothing for them in the afterlife. So they can never retain their individuality in the Force. So what is this bullshit about all the Sith live within me? And then you have Rey talking about be with me, and you hear, as cool as the moment was, hearing Hayden Christensen, Freddie Prinze Jr., Samuel L. Jackson, all this for as cool as the moment was. Remember, oh, that's cool. Let's step back from cool. Let's step back from like and dislike for a second, and let's just, what does the story convey? What is the point of Revenge of the Sith?
In your solitude on Tatooine, training I have for you.
Training?
An old friend has learned the path to immortality.
An old friend has learned the path
to immortality. One who has returned from the netherworld of the Force. Your old master.
Qui-Gon.
You have no will, you have no nothing, you are just part of the Force. The cosmic Force. As opposed to the living Force. So how are these former Jedi speaking to her when the only ones that can retain their individuality is Qui-Gon, who had to be trained by the Wills, or at least by the Force priestesses that were at the end of Season 6 of Clone Wars, and then went on to train Obi-Wan and Yoda in how to do it. How does Kylo disappear, then, with no training whatsoever in any of that? Well, maybe Luke trained him how to do it. Maybe. Do we know how long he was training with Luke? They've implied in these movies, and I know in certain books that are canon now, they imply that it was a short amount of time. And he was able to train. Yoda and Obi-Wan had to be training for decades. Presumably. Okay, I'll give you that. Presumably. And they were able to learn how to do it. Presumably they trained Luke how to do it. And presumably because you apparently just say Leia is a Jedi and trained as a Jedi in this way, even though you've never mentioned it before in the previous 2 sequel movies. Maybe there's a shred of narrative cohesion there. But if Leia was trained in how to do it, why does her body not disappear until Kylo's? When we've seen that at the moment of death, Yoda and Ben, at the moment of death, they pass on to the netherworld of the Force with their individuality intact. The other thing that I mentioned, and I mentioned this in the non-spoiler review, is Force powers. Not their existence, but their utilization. The fact that Rey can pick up an object and sense what happened with it. That's a Force power from Quinlan Vos. The Force healing. Okay, fine. It's crazy that she knows such a technique such as that. Really would have helped Obi-Wan when Qui-Gon went down. It really would have helped a lot of Jedi when they went down. Let's give it that. Because Baby Yoda. If you have not seen the end of The Mandalorian yet, skip ahead to this time point, this timestamp that I'm putting in here right now. Baby Yoda has Force healing. Okay, as a toddler. Okay, let's give it to her because of that. Here's my thing with someone, because she has all abilities. She has all Force powers. The saga as a whole, up until this point, has said that yes, Jedi have a particular set of skills. No pun intended for Liam Neeson / Qui-Gon. A particular set of skills that they can all utilize. Force jump, force push, mind trick to a degree. All this stuff. Yet, certain Jedi have an affinity to something that others do not. Quinlan Vos has the affinity to touch an object and be able to glean information from that object. No other Jedi has shown that ability. Ezra, in Rebels, is able to have this affinity for animals. Speak to them through the Force in a sense. No other Jedi has shown that type of ability. Not that other Jedi can't, but what my point is that certain Jedi have an affinity to certain things that others do not, which makes those Force abilities unique. Rey has all the motherfucking abilities. She just has all of them, with little training. You may say, oh, but she was trained by Leia. That brings up another point that a little aside. She was trained by Luke, and if I remember the dialogue correctly, Luke said that she stopped training with Luke because she saw darkness in her son's future, and she saw death in her son's future, and she ceased to train. Why? So that you could prevent that? So why did you send Kylo to Luke? Why did you and Han then send Kylo, or Ben at the time, to Luke in order to train if you saw death in his future? But, once again, she has all the Force abilities, and she can utilize all of them. With no effort. Everybody's like, she's powerful, so is Anakin. Anakin never had it this easy. Anakin had to train. You can say, Marcus, she was trained between Last Jedi, yeah, but before this movie, she was still utilizing Force abilities with zero effort. Because you have Jedi, long trained, farther ahead than she is, with more potential than she has, that had to train, and even in the training, effort was needed for certain Force abilities. Yes, Force jump, Force push, mind trick, so, some of those things, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Yoda having to stop a pillar from landing on Anakin and Obi-Wan in Episode 2. Having to lift the X-Wing in Empire. All those things. Effort. And she just goes to, and just able to pull a transport out of the sky. Well, Marcus, Galen Merrick did it in The Force Unleashed. Yes, in a video game. In a video game. Certain things are more functional in a different narrative than they are in another. And even in that, yes, it was still being said, that's too powerful. The Star Wars saga has never portrayed them as gods. They are Force users. If anything, the Force is God. They are merely conduits. The Sith try to be gods. That's their problem. They are merely vessels, conduits for the Force, which gives them extraordinary abilities, far beyond those of the normal person, but they have never been portrayed to be gods. In this, you started in the first two, and in this you go whole hog on the fact that Rey is basically, Palpatine, Kylo, all of them are basically gods. There is nothing outside of each other and facing each other that can stop you. I refer you back to Episode 1.
Perhaps I killed a Jedi and took it from him.
I don't think so. No one can kill a Jedi.
I wish that was so.
When you have trained Jedi that are being shot down by droids in Attack of the Clones, yet you have this barely trained, maybe a year between Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, a year trained Padawan, she can just do everything. Even Anakin, the Chosen One, after a year of training, couldn't do everything. We saw him in Attack of the Clones 10 years after his training, and he couldn't pull off the godlike feats that she's doing right now. As the freaking Chosen One. Narratively speaking, yes, that's an issue. You may love it, you may hate it. Narratively speaking, disregard the love, disregard the hate. Narratively speaking, how is that congruent with anything that has come before? There is no narrative issue with the powers existing. There is a narrative limitation in the fact of how powerful they are, how it's utilized, which once again causes it in the saga as a whole. Square peg into a round hole relationship. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're so inclined. Check out my channel for all my other content that I have on there, my short films, reactions, breakdowns, reviews, all the good stuff that's on there, and much, much more to come. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.